So, yesterday we cover on the objective, the goal of this Vipassana meditation. This objective finally get us out from this cycle of birth and rebirth. This cycle of birth and rebirth represents all forms of suffering. This Vipassana is not just meant for some worldly happiness or some overcoming just our mental problems or physical problems. But nowadays, we begin to see a lot of times devotees or practitioners lowering down the goal just for happiness in the everyday life. Finally, when we free from this cycle of birth and rebirth, it is also mean that we eradicate the defilements, the mental defilements. Together with that, realization of Nibbana is seen. So this objective, it has to be clear to us. But whether we can achieve it or not, that's another thing. So to achieve it, therefore, we have to come back finally to just lifting, pushing, dropping, rising, falling, biting, chewing, and all these fundamentals. So when we come back to the practice itself, then you have to set up the mind to be alert, clear, continuously mindful. With that clear mind, sharp mind, precise mind, we bring that attention onto the right objects, not into the conceptual, but into the reality. Now, reality here, it means that these various kinds of mental and various kinds of physical objects. Now, all these objects, they carry three different types of characteristics. Now, the first characteristic is called the individual characteristic. The Pali word is sabhava lakhana. The second one is called the triple characteristics. The triple here means there's a beginning, middle, ending. Pali word is sankhata lakhana. And the third characteristic here is the universal characteristic. Here lies the arising and passing away moment after moment. Together with that arising and passing away, also here lies the true anicca, dukkha, and anatta. So yesterday I mentioned that when we start off with this Vipassana retreat, you are trained, you are being drilled again and again to look out for the sensation, to differentiate the sensation, to notice how the rising, falling, moving, or take notice of the different types of pain, how they change, or take note of how the mind, this type of mind, that type of mind, how they come, how they go. All this, we begin to notice them again and again in the retreat. So, by able to distinguish all these different objects, the mind becomes clearer, more continuous, and then it begins to able to understand that this mind and body, they are different, because you can able to distinguish the movements, for example, and the mind that knows the movement. Or even like you're noticing the sitting, touching, you notice the sensation, but also you know the mind that knows the touching or the sitting. So it takes a lot of training in the beginning to able to distinguish all these phenomena as they really are. So you see, when we enter into Vipassana, it always takes up different characteristics rather than a single object. In Samatha meditation, it's what we call object-based meditation, whereas we come into Vipassana is characteristic-based meditation. That's why Samatha and Vipassana, their approach is very different. If you take Samatha, for example, just the in-breath, out-breath, everything else you ignore, even the pain, thoughts, thinking, your job is only one, follow the in-breath, out-breath. When it comes to the Vipassana, It's characteristic based. That means you follow the characteristic of the movement. How is the movement like? Is the movement long, short, fast, slow? What is happening there? And you notice the pain. You notice the various types of pain. It pulls here, it moves here, it goes there, it more, it less. You are noticing into the characteristic of the pain. Even you notice the sensation of the touch. You begin, a number of you able to notice the different sensation that arises only just with the touching. Even some of us begin to notice the different states of mind. When the mind, there's thoughts there, and you watch the thought disappear. After that, you watch that the pleasant feeling arises, that it comes, it disappears. That means you begin also to notice the different aspect of the mind. So again and again, we do this day in, day out to differentiate all these characteristics. So it will come to a time when you notice this characteristic, you also come to a time that the mind actually can separate between characteristic of the body and the characteristic of the mind. Sometimes both of them comes together, and sometimes you notice the whole rising and falling, for example, and then the mind that's clearly observing the rising and falling, and the mind that notes also as prominent as the rising and falling. So here, when the mind and you can able to differentiate these two, this is where we begin to enter into the way of Vipassana, into the progress of Vipassana for the purpose of that enlightenment. So here, as we keep going on, it's not going to be a smooth journey. I can assure you that pain is not your worst enemy. It's your own emotion and your wrong thinking and all your distorted thinking. That will become the biggest enemy. The more that you have all this type of emotion and anger and strong desire, the path is going to be more challenging. Now the Buddha gave us a simile, not a simile, sorry. He gave how yogi progress in this way, in this path. So there are 4 types of yogis. It says 4 types of yogis who develops, and these 4 types, it basically divided into how strong your defilements are and how strong your wholesome mind, especially the wisdom factor. So the first category of the yogi has weak wisdom, that means weak wholesome mind, and strong defilements. The second one is the weak wisdom or weak wholesome mind, but also weak defilements. The third one is that they have a strong wholesome mind or strong wisdom, but here also equally strong defilements. So the last one is the strong wisdom, strong wholesome mind, and weak defilements. The strong wholesome mind, it determines how fast you're able to progress. Then the second one, the defilements, it determines how much difficulty that you're going to go through. I'll put it in another way, as if like your car. How powerful is the car? And also the other one is how difficult is the road. So which category you think you are in? And again, this category, they are not permanent. They can change. That means there's hope, If you were to fall into the first category, then it's going to be very difficult. Now again here, you see, when we begin, for most of us, we have this weak mindfulness, weak this one, and the defilements is a lot because we never know how to control these things. We let it go wild throughout our whole lives, life after life. Therefore, when we come into Vipassana, we try to control it. So every time, like if the defilements are strong, you come into the retreat, then you have this emotional entanglement, you have anger, you have a lot of desire, you have a lot of restless mind, and therefore when you try to practice, you find that it's so difficult because you have to confront all this emotional and difficulty. Perhaps also in the past, we have not developed any form of or any much of wholesome state of mind. nothing on mindfulness, and therefore when we come into a retreat, we find that it's so difficult for us to go forward. Therefore, while we are here, we keep our discipline, we do the walking, sitting, and we try again and again, lifting, pushing, dropping, rising, falling. We bring in the wholesome quality, the mindfulness, you would bring in the concentration, we bring in the this one, in order to build those things up. Then after a week or so, like a lot of you, if you have been following, trying hard, you begin to see that actually the mind can actually notice what is happening, and at that time the defilements, the emotion, it's more less, and you can begin to notice what is happening. You will come to a time and you keep practicing, the mind gets stronger, the noting mind gets stronger, much more continuous. You will find that also that time the thinking mind, the sleepiness, the emotion, it gets much less. Still there, but not so powerful. And then you will come to a time you will develop further, the mind can be totally alert, clear, for the whole hour, without much thoughts coming in, without much defilements coming in. The mind is fully alert of what is going on. So all this development, is all can be trained, all can be pushed, all can be developed, and all the defilements, the restless mind, the drowsiness, the emotion, everything can be reduced. So with that, then we can start to able to do this vipassana more clearer, more distinguish what is truly going on. Now as we keep on meditating, as we keep on noticing everything what is happening with the sitting, walking, daily activities, if you keep going retreat from another retreat, sometimes you begin to notice that the intention that we talk about quite a lot, that the intention becomes a prominent factor. Then you begin to notice that the intention arises first. If there's no intention, there's no movement taking place. This is more on the grosser side, but sometimes we go into the finer side. For example, even every lifting, pushing, dropping, it comes with a clear intention. Even it goes finer, that every staggered movement of a lifting, maybe divided into 3 or 4, then every little movement comes with, it preceded by intention. Here, it's not only differentiate between the mind and the body, but it begins to see into the conditionality, how one is affecting the other one. Here in the insight, in the 16th insight, you call it the knowledge of conditionality, because you begin to see conditioning of one object affecting another object. Or sometimes yogis notice, for example, the hearing process. It's not hearing, that is one sensation or one consciousness there. And then this consciousness from the hearing, it triggers, feeling arises, like pleasantness arises. Therefore, pleasant feelings and the hearing are two separate things. So in many ways, it will show you how conditionality is happening between the mind and body. So, as I said, right in the beginning, noticing the intention is nothing small. It's in fact that something to prepare you for the later development, to make you kind of familiar with the whole state of mind and body.
Per rendervi un po' più familiari a tutti questi stati mentali e fisici.
Although, as I said last week, I spoke about it during the intention, as I said that although in the beginning part it looks superficial, but when we do it, but when we get the result, then we'll see that it's actually very important. When we look at insight, now some of you understood insight by the development of this insight by this 16th insight knowledge. But when the Buddha talked about the development, it talked about it in another way. It talks about purification. Purification happens is together when you pay attention to the objects as it happens. You don't feel the purification because you don't see how the things are being purified, but what you directly see is this object, how they behave, how their characteristics. You see, just now earlier I talked about when the mind able to distinguish between this mind, body, and their different characteristic, and also I talk about how this mind and body are all interacting with each other. Now while you are watching all these things happening, then for some people who attach to the idea of a soul or a God or anything, then they don't see anything except these two phenomena interacting with each other. The mind is so concentrated, clear, alert, continuously clear, and yet when they go inside into the mind and body, they don't see there's a soul there. Because sometimes some people strongly attach to the idea of a soul or idea of an external God, and then therefore when the mind is even heightened up, they don't see when they are when they are in the everyday life and when they are in meditation, how come the views are different? Sometimes some yogis get very upset, very difficult, because whole life they've been fed that there must be a soul, there must be a God, there must be everything. But when they come in to see into the mind and body as they really are, then they don't find it. So while you enter, as you see these two things happening, behind that the purification take place. Here it purifies the view. That's why the Buddha called it purification of view. It purifies a lot of views or concepts that we hold on very strongly, and now when we look into the mind and body process, we see them as they really are. So purification has taken place right there. But if you don't have strong attachment to this type of view, when you don't have this strong, when you progress into the Vipassanā, as you develop, you just progress. Then there's no shocking, no big change over there. It's just a progress. So purification is happening, not just only on that stage, but actually purification happening every time you pay attention to your objects carefully, clearly. So just by differentiating the different individual characteristics, one actually also helps to slowly being purified the views also. Now, let's come back to the second characteristic. Individual characteristic as the first one, the second one as the triple characteristic of beginning, middle, ending. In theory, all objects, whether mind or body objects that you pay attention to, they always have a beginning, middle, ending. But when you come to the Vipassanā, as you pay attention to it, they don't show you the beginning, middle, and ending at the same time. Sometimes the beginning is prominent, the middle, ending not so prominent. Sometimes middle is prominent, the other two not prominent. Sometimes the ending is prominent, but the other two not prominent. But sometimes as you develop, all the three become prominent. But when you go further, sometimes only one section again is prominent, the other section not prominent again. So this thing sometimes it creates confusion to the yogis. Sometimes they find that how come they develop so far away, then only can see one part. The other part, I thought I've seen it before, but now I couldn't see it. Is it something wrong with my practice? So a lot of things you cannot figure out how the Vipassana progress or how all these objects are presented to you. You have to see them as it is rather than you question them or you think that you have good intellectual understanding of them. All these things you have to put aside just to see them as they are. As you pay attention to this arising, middle or ending, now sometimes when I hear of basic instruction is given to the yogis, sometimes yogis are forced, inverted, forced to watch the rising and falling exactly how it begins, how it middle, and how it ends. In the beginning of the instruction, I never talk about what is the beginning, how is the middle, how is the ending of the rising and falling, or in the lifting, pushing, dropping. When a yogi is not trained, when a yogi is not ready to differentiate the beginning, middle, and ending, you force the yogi to look at that object as beginning, middle, ending because the book says so. Then yogis will end up with a lot of tension, a lot of problem. Now you see, as I said, every object has all these three different characteristics. But at a certain time, especially in the beginning part of development of mind, the individual characteristic is more prominent compared to the other two characteristics. Now, sometimes, once in a while, the second characteristic of something that is beginning or something ending, perhaps also you can see it also, but not long. On a later, further development, then the second characteristic of beginning, middle, or ending becomes clearer compared to the second one, compared to the first one or the third one. Then, for example, the second characteristic that becomes clearer to you is, instead of, you see, when you notice the intention, you notice the next movement that is moving, but this time you exactly can feel the beginning of a movement. Then the beginning is more prominent compared to the pushing or dropping. Compared to the follow through. But the beginning is the most clearest during that time for the body. You will see it for yourself if you were to pay attention. You see, one part is the intention. You notice the conditioning. But the second part is where the noticing of that beginning of a movement. That means you also begin to see the second characteristic of the sensation. At times also, the rising and falling itself, that you can able to see the beginning of how the whole rising take place. In the beginning of your practice, when you put your attention to the rising and falling, you already put the attention somewhere in the movement. Is there? You don't really know exactly how it starts or exactly how it ends. Because that time, the beginning part and the ending part, they are not prominent. Only somewhat in the middle, they are prominent. But usually, when the middle is only clear, then that one, we just categorize them as the first characteristic because you only see that movement, for example. So far can follow. A lot of you like question mark in the face. I mean, it gets a little bit complicated, but it's still connected to what we are doing actually. If you don't really understand, it's not a problem, but the most important, you understand how to do the lifting, pushing, dropping, biting, chewing, rising, falling. That is the most important thing. Now, take note of, like, for example, the pain. Let's look into the pain. Now, when you pay attention to the pain, for example, you sit for an hour, you don't actually, most of the time, don't see how the pain ends. Usually the pain, when the bell rings, the pain still hasn't ended. Or even while in that particular sitting, when the pain arises, before actually it ends, you're already noticing another pain that is prominent. So sometimes it continues from one pain to another pain, as if like it changed from one kind of pain to another kind of pain to another kind of pain. So as long as it show you in that way, you pay attention in that way. Even though you have the idea or you have the knowledge that all objects have beginning, middle, and ending, here make sure that you don't go and look for the ending when it's not presented to you. So here, as long as you pay attention to them as they are, then you are okay. Because sometimes when the yogi wants to match the theory and the observation, because the theory says so, there's beginning, middle and ending. Therefore, in my pain, I want to see exactly how you begin, how you this one, and how you end. And because of that, if they do it in such a way, the whole mind goes into a lot of tension, a lot of pressure, or the pressure is slowly building up until, how come I have all this pressure? Usually, as you come into this knowledge of noticing the intention, usually that beginning part is usually the most prominent aspect of it. Now, while you are looking at this thing, at how one object of body and mind, and also how this object and conditioning each other, again here there are two different aspects of anatta. But this aspect of anatta is not that powerful, not that strong, not that as if like life transforming. Even by seeing all these phenomena, sometimes yogis also don't realize that they are seeing anatta or the perception of anatta. Now, even you do not know it intellectually, if you do not know it, it's perfectly okay, as long as you keep noticing and keep going, carry on the noting. Because the aspect of anatta is going to come in so many different perceptions. Another perception of anatta is once in a while, you may see it also, sometimes when you do your walking or sitting, as if like somehow or another your mind is out of the thing, and as if like you're observing slightly from outside like that. So there are different aspects of perception of anatta arising, but again here we should not keep on thinking, noting a bit of rising and falling. Am I seeing anatta or I'm seeing anicca? Don't overthink about it, because I know every Dhamma talk, every retreat you come, they always talk about anicca, dukkha, anatta, until you are so full of it. While we are looking at all these things, while we are looking at all these phenomena, as I said, we have to keep going rather than thinking about how insight should come to you or which way the insight to come to you. Your job is just to make sure you put all these thoughts aside and put your attention to whatever is happening. Now you see, sometimes in Mahasi Sayadaw's book, he talks about the progress of this Vipassana meditation in terms of 16 insight knowledge, and he gives you a description of each insight. Sometimes, not sometimes, actually a lot of times, when the yogis, when they start to progress and then they begin to open up the book and then they try to measure, you notice something, am I at this insight? Because there he said so. Then a lot of times the yogis overestimate their own practice. Just because they experience a little bit here and there, they think that they're almost enlightened already. So a lot of times we get caught up in our own make-believe. So don't worry, all these things, as long as you keep developing, keep noticing, you will pass through this thing whether you intellectually realize them or not. You see, development of this progress towards from where you are until enlightenment, this progress is a kind of like a law that it does not change whether it's for you or for the devas up there, or wherever, or any beings actually. Even whatever beings wants to go through the enlightenment, first thing they have to go is to separate mind and matter, or mind and body. So while we are notice this thing, as I said, a lot of these views, the idea that we carry, it begins to remove. Now, as we go on into the further development, as we keep noticing and practicing and day in, day out doing the same thing, it will come to a time that phenomena changes faster. Beginning, middle, ending. Although when we say this, But actually when you practice it, they got their speed. Sometimes it's faster, sometimes slower. You see, sometimes when you pay attention to an object, let's say you notice a sensation of touch. You notice the sensation of touch and then you feel the phenomena of, let's say, there's warmness there. But after a while, it kind of fades away. Then immediately the mind already taking up another another sensation. So sometimes you will notice that you stay on that particular sensation slightly longer. Sometimes you stay just for a short while, you already move to the next object. Now in the deeper development, sometimes the phenomena, although it stays very clearly for you to see, and also when it disappears, when it fades away, it also fades away very clearly for you to see. Like for example, you notice the pain, exactly how it starts, and then it grows very powerful, very strong, and yet you stay with it, it kind of like disappears slowly, maybe within like 5 minutes or so. And when we finish that particular pain, the next pain starts to arise. But sometimes this process, it takes place faster. Within like a minute, it already so acute, but then the next minute or the next few seconds is already like diminishing. As if like you begin to see distinctive type of pain, but at the same time they kind of arise strong, but it diminished. Or even sometimes you notice the rising, falling, and the movement of the rising, falling, as if like the breathing as if it's going faster, but then your breath is actually still quite slow, as if like you're not seeing the whole thing fully, as if like it come and it's already gone. Or even you see the whole rising itself as an object, and you see how it begins and how exactly it ends in a very fast manner. So sometimes when it gets changes a little bit faster, you're not able to stay with that object for a long period of time right now. It kind of like you notice it for a few seconds or few less than a minute, but it's already changing to the next object. It's not like when you are beginning, when you have a beginning of a practice, you have a good sitting, you can follow the rising and falling for a period of time. Sometimes you notice this few times, the mind is already changing to the touching or to the other sensation in the body, and you feel that how the whole sensation develop and it disappear, and the mind moves on to the next one. The next one can even goes into the mind, to the consciousness, and sometimes in the consciousness or sometimes in the brain or in the neck, you have some other strong sensation that also become clear to you. As if like when you are sitting there, you don't stay in an object. The mind as if like keep on moving, keep on searching, keep on looking from one after an object, but you begin to see this object keep coming, disappearing, coming and disappearing, coming and disappearing. So this time the yogi feel that as if like they are not really meditating, the object keep running here and there. But this is exactly what Vipassana want to show you. Or even sometimes you do the lifting, pushing, dropping, while you are doing it, how come the mind is not sticking to the steps, but is keep on coming to the secondary object, and then as it goes into the steps again, after that it goes up to this one. But all this time, you know yourself that the mind is continuously noting. It's just like it's different from before. So next time, if you feel like you are not really meditating or objects are not to your liking, you have to put all these things aside and make sure that you see them as they are. So therefore, when we talk about the different secondary objects, that day we talk about is again to prepare you to be familiar with all these secondary objects, because when the mind starts running here and to the next object, this secondary object will becomes important at that time. So everything that we have discussed in the past few talks, is to prepare you so that in the future, as you progress, you are familiar and you know what to do when that situation comes in. So we stop here for tonight and we will continue it on Monday, not tomorrow.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.